at Algebra 1, lab number 5, which is all about calculating the intersection of two lines. If you don't know how to graph one line, go back to lab number 2 and make sure you know how to do that, because we're going to skip over a few different things that we have already learned. But the first thing we need to do, it says a graphing calculator can be used to find the intersection of two lines. Find the intersection of y equals 2x minus 5 and 2y plus 3x equals 6. So we first go to our y equals editor, and we are going to plug in that 2x minus 5. So that's our first equation, and it was already in y equals form, in slope-intercept form. The other one, though, is in standard form. So before you plug it into your calculator, you do need to get y alone. So subtract that 3x from each side and divide by 2, and you will end up with an equation of negative 3 halves x plus 3. So be careful how you plug in this negative 3 halves x. What I would recommend doing is, number 1, you have to use this negative sign rather than the subtraction sign to begin your equation. And number 2, I would recommend plugging in your 3 halves as either 1.5 or in parentheses for that fraction. So 3 over 2, and then now we can continue with the equation to put x plus 3. Once you have your two equations in there, we can graph them using our standard viewing window. So do zoom and then number 6 so that we can see each of these. And sometimes this will happen. Mine did come up with an error. Invalid dimension means that something has gone wrong with our stat plot. So I'm actually glad that that came up. One way to fix that type of error is go back to your y equals editor and see if any of your plots are on. And one of mine is on. So there's a couple ways to fix that. Number 1 is go up to it so it's blinking on there and press enter. That will actually turn the plot off, and now you can graph your lines. The other way you can do it is go to second and stat plot and go into one of these plots. If one of them says on instead of off, go into the plot and turn it off. Okay, so now we should be able to see our two equations when we do zoom 6. All right, and here they come. We have our blue line and our, I believe, red line for our next one. And so we need to find the intersection of these two lines. Let's approximate it first and see if we can get close with our trace feature. So it starts on that blue line for me, and I look and see my intersection is probably like 2.3 and negative 0.5 about, but these don't look like very nice round numbers, and I don't know if that's exactly the intersection. So let's use the calculator's features to actually figure out the intersection point. We do that by still kind of using this trace feature, but we're in the calc function here. So do second trace. And then from here, you have a few different options that we'll be using in other labs. Right now, we want number 5, intersect. And then it's going to start asking you some questions. It says first curve. What this is actually asking it for is for you to click enter on one of the lines. So move your cursor so it's clearly on one or the other line and press enter. So you're saying that blue line is the first line or first curve. And then now it's changed and it's on the red line now, and it says second curve, and we say yes, that red line is my second curve. Last question it's going to ask you is guess. So this is where it wants you to approximate that center point, that intersection point, and then press enter. Okay, and it gives us the exact intersection point here of 2.2857143 and negative 0.428571. These are both, it's the exact intersection point, but I would rather see these actually in their fraction form to know what those numbers actually are. And our calculator also does that for us as well, just with a couple different buttons. So what we're going to do is go back to our calculator page. So quit out of this screen by doing second mode so we can quit. And what you're going to do is basically say, I want to turn my x into a fraction and my y into a fraction. So we're going to press and get the variable x, and then we are going to use my math button to find the fraction. And it's actually our first one here. So it says change into a fraction. And when we press enter, it should say that that x value that we found, it has to still be part of your graph. It has to be the last thing that you did. And then it will tell you that your x as a fraction as 16/7. And we can find y as a fraction as well by, instead of using this same button to get x, I have to find the y as one of these green letters. And when we go down through and find y, we see that it's green above the number 1 button. So we're going to have to do alpha number 1, and I get y, and go back to that math page and press enter on the fraction. So change y into a fraction, and it says that our y value is -3/7. So our intersection point of those two lines is actually 16/7, comma -3/7. So this is how you would find the intersection of two lines on your graphing calculator for lab number 5.